For the time that's ours, I'd like to share from this thought the tragedy of a wasted testimony. The tragedy of a wasted testimony. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you have brought us to a place where we can celebrate in community. God, we have sung your praises. We have prayed for one another. Now, God, we need to hear a word from you. God, we don't hear from you. What shall we do? God, may the words of my mouth and meditations of all of our hearts be holy and acceptable in thy sight. For you are our strength, O God, and without a doubt, you are our Redeemer. In the name of Jesus the Christ we pray. Amen. The tragedy of a wasted testimony. Beloved, believe it or not, in just a few weeks, families will gather around this nation for a day of cooking, traveling, and fine dining on a day we call in this country Thanksgiving. Amen. Beloved, I always hold up the tension of that holiday. The tension of lands that were stolen through genocide. But what has become for many of us a time to gather with family, to celebrate, to mourn, to remember, and sure enough, to eat. Yes. Beloved, on that day last year, after making several stops throughout the day, I finally made it to my cousin's house who was hosting us that day. Beloved, I walked into the home full of clanging dishes, evidence of an on-point meal. It was full of boisterous laughter. It was filled with children excited to play with cousins, and there were drinks of all kinds flowing. I know I'm in the right place. I know I'm in the right place. Beloved, the evening goes on, and I don't know if you ever had this experience, but I begin to meet relatives and family I didn't even know I had. And one of these new relatives, beloved, pulls me to the side and he begins to talk to me. Really, it feels like an interview, but after a while, maybe it was the clanging dishes, evidence of an on-point meal. Maybe it was the boisterous laughter. Maybe it was the children excited to play with cousins. Maybe it was the drinks of all kinds flowing. But this relative, beloved, begins to school me on this thing called life. And the oddest thing happens, beloved. It's almost as if he's talking at me, but he's really traveled back in time and trying to talk to his younger self. That moment where I am hemmed up in the corner had less to do with me and more to do with someone who has seen some things, been through some storms, experienced some victories, and wishes he could go back and tell his younger self a couple things. And since he can't, the brother who walked in late on Thanksgiving will have to do it. Beloved, it was a little bit awkward, I'm not going to lie to you, but if I'm honest, I can't really tell you that I learned anything from him that night. And y'all, it wasn't the noise of the clanging dishes, evidence of an on-point meal. It was not the boisterous laughter. I was not distracted by the kids excited to play with their cousins. I was not looking at the table with the drinks flowing of every kind. The whole time he's talking, I'm trying to figure out who this brother is, because I don't know him. And I found out in that moment, it's hard to teach someone you have no relationship with. Y'all, I know I'm not the first one to be in those shoes, as unfortunate as it is. because of the brother that we meet in our text. May I teach this morning? Let me introduce to some and introduce to others a brother by the name of Rehoboam. Let the church say Rehoboam. Okay, let's just call him Ro. Let's just call him Ro. Okay. Ro, beloved, is the son of the most famous king, one of the most famous kings in all of biblical Israel. King you might know by the name of King Solomon. Y'all, and King Solomon is not just the wise, wealthy womanizer that history remembers him for. Because truth is, he uses forced labor to build the temple of God and repair most of the cities of Israel. And by the end of his rule, the people are so weary they can't wait for him to die. Solomon dies, and Ro is left with having to deal with the mess that his father leaves behind. And if I know life the way I'm learning about life, I have a funny feeling and a sneaky suspicion that there are some of us who have been in places where we have been left to deal with the aftermath of what others left before us. Children know what it's like to have to clean up the debts and severed relationships and emotional trauma left in the wake of a parent's death. Partners know what it's like having to build trust because wounds of deceit run so deep that we find ourselves paying for someone else's mistakes. Sons know what it's like to have to live in the shadow of our father, good or bad, having to answer for their stumbles or their victories just because they gave life to us. Beloved, I would suggest that all of us know something about having to deal with a mess that we did not create. Amen. May I go a little deeper? Yeah. It's important for you to know, beloved, that Ro is 41 years old when he gets on that throne. Y'all, I used to read this text as if he was a teenager. But he is a grown, insert adjective there, man. Bro has seen some things. He has sat at tables with his father. He fully benefits from the system of injustice that his father put in place. So at 41, are we not holding him accountable? Even if all he's seen is dysfunction? Can I talk to the brothers in the room? At what point do we have to start thinking critically for ourselves, brothers? Even if all we've seen is mistake after mistake. Well, the demand for critical thinking's on the road comes to him as soon as he's on the job. Because the people come knocking for justice. For decades, the people are building a house to God, and it is a God of liberation that they're serving, but under the yoke of forced labor that they are working. Solomon fails God, beloved, and the people by believing that his call comes at the expense of other people's lives. Y'all, we know it's bad. Because people don't demand that their government restructure itself for no reason. Look around our world, beloved. Chile is crying out for a reason. There have been decades of the wealthy hoarding resources, and it's led to more than 1 million people in Santiago calling out the evils of capitalism. Y'all, Lebanon is crying out for a reason. There are people who need their government to see that the little that they have cannot be saddled upon with more debt. Syria is calling out for a reason, because our nation has put oil and profit before people. Dallas and Fort Worth is crying out for a reason, because black and brown people are literally not safe in our own homes, and we have the video footage to prove it. So excuse me if I ride with the people of our text, because they come to row and say, row, we could not reason with your father. Can we at least talk to you? Yo, watch what Roe does. To his credit, he says, y'all come back, give me 3 days, let me think about it. He goes to the advisors who worked with his father, and y'all watch what they say. They say, we messed up. The advisors look over their tenure with Solomon, and they realize that they messed up. They embarked on a mission to supposedly do God's work, and left a trail of pain and injustice behind. And before we take our cancel culture claws out, ready to attack them, recognize what's happening. The advisors are trying to repair what they've broken. That's more than we can say for these yet-to-be United States of America. The genocide of Native Americans and the theft of this land has not been acknowledged, nor has it been repaired. The kidnapping that brought us to these shores in 1619 and all over this world has not been acknowledged, nor has it been repaired. The wage gap, beloved, increases. That means the richest in the world continue to get wealthier, not the other way around, and that does not seem to be on the road to being repaired. They say to roll in a real sense. If you're asking what we would do now, we would repair what we've broken. Trust us, Ro, we've seen it all. We've seen where your father ended up, and we were there for the ride. Can I let you know that? I know this is not an easy text, but the messy grace of this text is that Solomon's advisors seem to have learned from the error of their ways. And they want to take the hard step of repairing what they've contributed to breaking. And I just wonder, beloved, if there is anyone in this place that might see that as a place to thank God. Because God is so much God. God is so merciful. God is so faithful. Not only will God spare us from the situations we get ourselves into, but God will give us a chance every now and then to look back, to learn, to testify, and watch this, give us a chance to repair. Is there anybody that can testify? I have seen it all. I've been up and I've been down. I have a lot and I've been in need. But here's what I would have done differently enough in life. But by God's grace, I'm still here and still able to do something about it. So I don't know who I came to preach to, but the miracle of your breathing is that grace allows us to name where we have fallen short and humble ourselves enough to roll up our sleeves and get back to work. Acknowledge that we hurt some people and we have some phone calls to make. Acknowledge that we stayed silent on some things and need to admit that we were wrong. Admit that we covered some mess for somebody else and we need to let them, I can't cover for you anymore. The good news of this text is that God never believes that we are too far gone, that we can acknowledge where we have fallen short and commit ourselves to repair. Y'all, that was the only good news of the text. But the tragedy of the text is just as real. And Rev, it really came to me in the form of a question from one of my parishioners after Bible study one Wednesday. One of my parishioners was leaving the room, and she said, Rev, I wonder how well Rehoboam knows those advisors. The text emphasizes that the people he ends up listening to are the boys he has grown up with all his life. And the advice that the advisors give, watch this, as wise as it is, comes from men that he arguably does not know. The tragedy of this text is that there is no relationship there that gives them credibility to speak into this young man's life. And y'all, I believe that's a real word for us today. Because my instinct when I first read the text was to blame Ro. There's a lot of blame to go over there. But y'all, truth is, I've been Ro. Maybe you have been Ro. Just wink amen if you've ever been that way. You might be sitting next to a Rehoboam. But just like that brother at Thanksgiving last year, when we see someone about to head down the path that we've stumbled upon, it makes sense that we want them to know to be careful. So let me just talk to the Roes in the room for a moment. Listen to the elders. Listen to their testimony. Listen to the wisdom. Listen to it because it comes from a place of love. But may I talk to the advisors in the room? Those who have seen some things and maybe we want to repair what we've broken. Y'all, transformation doesn't happen without relationship. Amen. And perhaps this text bears witness to the truth that building relationships are just as important as having something meaningful to say. Y'all, we miss our opportunities to share our growth and maturation when we don't spend as much time building trust and mutual accountability. You know how I know this is true? We all know people who spend more time trying to sound deep than trying to take the time to get to know us. Don't look at God, don't look at God. We all know people who spend more time giving unsolicited advice than taking us out to lunch just to check in on us. We all know way too many people who spend more time talking than they do listening. And I wonder if Ro in our text might have listened to the wisdom of those advisors if someone had ever said, for 41 years, he's up next. Let's get to know him before the crisis hits. Let's get to know him before the mistake is made. Let's find out what his passions are before he messes up. I'm done, beloved, but here it is. I found this out not just by witnessing the interaction between Ro and the advisors in 1 Kings. I found this out really by hanging out with a fictional character by the name of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You might have met him, you might have met him. Beloved, it is that genius of a rapper and actor known as the Fresh Prince and Will Smith who acts his behind off in one of the greatest scenes that television has ever known. It is a heart-wrenching episode where Will in the show has his father Luke come back after decades of zigzagging in and out of his life. And after disappointing Will, beloved, for the last time, y'all, Will is heartbroken. Will tries to pretend like his heart has not shattered into a million pieces. Will tries to hide behind the veneer of masculinity. But Will allows himself finally to break down because of a relationship. But not just any relationship. It's his relationship with Uncle Phil. Who knows Uncle Phil in this room? Y'all, I love that scene, beloved, because Will allows Uncle Phil to console him. And this is the same Uncle Phil who holds him accountable. It's the same Uncle Phil who has grounded him in moments. It's the same Uncle Phil who gives him a hard time. But here's the good news. It's the same Uncle Phil who showed up to basketball games. It's the same Uncle Phil who told him how proud he is of him. It's the same Uncle Phil who commits to doing life with him. And I just wonder if there's anyone in church on a Sunday morning, on a day that we celebrate Men's Day, that can thank God for the men in our lives who have decided to build relationships with us. Life is hard enough, beloved. There are moments we're going to stumble. There are moments where we're going to fall. But I thank God for the brothers who don't just have advice to give, but will build a relationship. Brothers who have a testimony, but can take some time. Brothers who can let us know what God has done for them, but can hold us up through the bridges of life. I want to bless each and every brother in this house. I want to thank you for showing up for your families. Thank you for showing up for your communities. Thank you for showing up for our nation. And I want to thank you for building relationships, because it's every coffee that you buy. It's every meal that you buy. It's every talk that you give. It's every moment you show up. It's every hospital bed you sit by. It's every marriage conference you show up to. It's every anniversary you remember. It allows people to know that you care, so they can hear the testimony God has placed in your life. Here it is. I know by the worship and spirit in this place, there's wisdom all over this sanctuary. I know that there are some folks, by the way that you worship, that God has seen you through some things. Even situations that you got yourself into. But the tragedy of a wasted testimony is that we don't take the time to build relationships so people can hear what God has done for us. I thank God for the wisdom to build relationships and the wisdom to share our testimonies. Thanks be to God.